Alrighty, welcome back to Welding and Wheeling. In today's episode, we are working on my 1997 Ford F350. Now, if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you've probably seen that this truck is the absolute backbone of my channel, really the backbone of my existence for the last 8 or so years. I use this truck for everything. It's my only good truck right now. I did pick up a 92 Dodge W350, which you guys saw me revive a few months ago, that I'm hoping to make a reliable work truck as well to alleviate some of the work from this truck, but this truck is not going anywhere. So I've owned this truck for 8 years now, and it's been extremely dependable. It's let me down 2 times. Once, I overheated the transmission being an idiot. The second time, it blew the high-pressure oil pump lines about almost exactly a year ago, coming back from Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, hauling my Argo back. That was a lot of fun. It blew the lines and drained all the oil out to the point where the high-pressure oil pump didn't have enough oil pressure to fire the injectors and thankfully shut the engine off before we killed it. This would have been a 12 valve or something. With that kind of oil leak, we probably would have seized it up due to lack of oil. So overall, for 8 years of owning a nearly 30-year-old truck, I can happily understand 2 issues. But lately, it's been letting me down in little ways. It's been really, really hard to start lately. It's gotten progressively worse over the last few years. And it's kind of one of those things that I dealt with. You know, you can plug the truck in, it always starts. But sometimes if a deal pops up or something and I want to use it right away, or heaven forbid, I need to use it for an emergency, I need this thing to start a lot quicker. On top of the hard to start issues, we have a pretty big fuel leak in the valley of the engine. And yeah, the last 2 years while I was living in my rental house, it was kind of a pain in the butt to work on this truck. It absolutely would not fit in my garage, and the only spot I had to work on it was on a driveway at a hill like this. So I did plenty of work to it, replacing the high pressure oil pump lines. I did that at like below 0-degree temperatures last year in the dark because that was my only option. That was a real treat. We also replaced some fuel lines up here. I've done brakes, front axle bearings, some various things over the last few years, but I've really been diverting a lot of work on this truck until I had a garage like this, big enough to fit the truck in. So I'm very thankful to have a place to work on this thing and hopefully get it back up to snuff, which we're going to start that in today's video. I'm not sure how far we're going to get. Before we dive headfirst into diagnostics and repair, I do want to talk a little bit about the story of this truck. I've never done a dedicated video on this truck. And like I said, it's been in like over half my videos, so kind of crazy I haven't done it till now. A lot of you guys ask about it and have asked for a dedicated video on it, so you're finally getting that. So this is a 97 Ford F350, so it's a single rear wheel, but the heavier duty truck. It is a crew cab long bed. I think it is an XLT, which means it's a little bit fancier interior, but that's never really mattered much to me. I've had this truck 8 years now, and the story of how I got it's kind of funny. At the time, that was like my junior year of high school when I bought it, I had a 89 Ford F350, which is a sweet old truck. It was a gas-powered truck. Early Ford fuel injection had a bunch of funky, quirky issues. It really liked to die in intersections like stoplights, and it was a cool truck. It just had some weird issues, and I knew I wanted something a little bigger, a little heavier duty, and a little bit more towing capability. So I sold that truck, and a couple projects that I had at the time, which I don't even remember what they were, but I remember for a period there I was pretty cleared out of toys because I saved all my pennies together to try and buy a nice truck. And I looked and looked and looked for like several months, maybe even almost a year. I was just scouring all of the East Coast for a good truck. I went to PA, Virginia, New Jersey, Maryland, all over the place trying to find a nice truck at the time. At that time, you could get like a 99 through 03 7.3 with like 150,000 miles for around 10 grand was probably fair. And I looked at a lot of trucks that vintage. I knew I wanted the 97 or, 94 and a half through 97 body style, but these trucks at the time were like 20 grand for the same mileage and same condition. So it was kind of out of the question. I looked at one OBS and ended up being rotted out. I looked at second gen Cummins trucks. One I got very close to buying and then found out the front section of the frame near the steering box was all Bondo. I don't think I looked at any Duramaxes. They seem to hold their value a little better, so they were out of my price range. But I just looked at a ton of trucks. I even looked at trucks that I didn't even like, just trying to convince myself on them because I just wanted to be done. And I was getting really burned out looking. And one day I happened to be doing a firewood delivery in a neighborhood about 40 minutes away from my parents' house. And way back in a neighborhood that I never would have gone down with if I wasn't doing that. And I saw this truck sitting beside a guy's house, and you could tell it was pretty unloved. So I left a note, and a couple days later, I got a call back from the owner. His name was Gino, a very eccentric guy. And I think it was Christmas Eve, he called me back and talked to him over the phone. He told me then it had 97,000 miles on it, which was really low miles in my, opinion. But hadn't been driven much in a few years. He really considered the truck a parts truck. He thought it was the only value was the engine since it was low miles. The truck had some rust issues. It had a lot of issues. So it didn't scare me away. I went down there and met with him and looked over the truck. And it did have plenty of issues. He hadn't been driving it much, so the batteries are shot. We did get it to fire up that day, but it leaked so much oil out of the pan, you couldn't even justify driving it. The pan had rotted out and was just dumping oil out the bottom. The core support was shot. All the doors had rust. The bed was junk. I'm sure it had a bunch of other issues that I'm forgetting now too, but I had quite a few issues. And at the time, I was looking for turnkey trucks, so I don't know what the hell I was doing looking at a project truck. But ended up striking a deal with him. I think I paid $4,000 for this truck, which was pretty fair for the both of us. I got a low miles Powerstroke that needed a ton of work, and he got rid of what he thought was just a parts truck. So got it home. Ended up being a whole debacle. The truck was originally purchased in a lease, or I guess it was leased to his father, and they had never gotten it out of the lease, even though it was paid off. At that time, it had been like 20 years. So that was a whole situation. It took me forever to get the title from him. Got that sorted out. Right away, I took it to a friend's shop that had a lift, and he helped me pull the cab up off the frame, and we pulled the engine up. Didn't disconnect anything, just pulled it up enough to get the oil pan out and replace that with a Moroso. I think it's a thicker pan and better painted. So fixed the oil leak there. I replaced the core support with a brand new one. And then I spent like a week rolling around underneath this truck with a needle scaler and a wire wheel, and just did every inch of the underside and the underside of the cab cleaned it all up, got all the rust off, and then put POR 15 all over this truck, which if I hadn't done that back then, this truck would probably be junk by now because it was so crusty. So did all that, drove it for a few months, and then the next big upgrade was the wheels and tires. These are the original Alcoa wheels. These are 315/75 16s or 16.5s, I don't remember. Falcon Wild Peaks. Love these tires, love these wheels. I had the wheels refinished by Blizzard Polishing in Maryland. They did an amazing job. Did that. Ended up finding another rust-free, good shape, standard pickup box and put that on because at the time that's what I wanted. And then at some point I changed my mind and decided that I guess really what I was doing is I was doing a bunch of side work for people working on small engines, and I had just gotten into welding and wanted to build like a mobile welding capable truck. So ended up selling that bed and buying the CM aluminum flatbed that the truck has on it now, which I love. Waited a few months to put it on until I saved up enough money to paint the truck. This is not the original color of the truck. This is dark forest green, which I believe is a newer Ford pickup color. Paid a shop to paint it, and they did a pretty good job for the budget that I gave them. The only bummer is my front fender on the driver's side is starting to rust a little bit, which is a real shame. And I think one of the doors is starting to rust again, which the paint job's only like 5 years old, so that's a real shame. But I paid probably half of what a real paint job would be, so I can't complain too much. Yeah, so got it painted, installed the flatbed, and then since then I've done a bunch of random little stuff. The truck is pretty much stock except for a aftermarket intake, a straight pipe exhaust, and I have a very mild tow tune on it. I've never been super interested in pumping the power up on this thing a whole lot because I need to depend on it rather than go fast. Some other things I've done to it is I built this all steel front bumper out of some 3/16 plate. That was quite a fun project. And then we've installed the crane on the back, which I'm sure you guys have seen. And one thing you guys probably haven't seen is I have a winch/air compressor tucked up the rear bumper of this thing. It's a Warn power plant. Really cool winch. If you get a chance, go look one up. They have one motor that powers either the air compressor or the winch. It's currently not working. I think I've got a minor electrical issue. I just need to crawl under there and figure that out. Yeah, so not a crazy truck, I guess, but it's my dream truck. It was my dream truck when I bought it, and it still is. I love this thing. And yeah, so that's kind of the story on this thing, how I ended up with it and what I've done to it so far. And I plan to keep it for as long as humanly possible. So let's get into doing some repair, and maybe we can do that. Alrighty, so the first thing we're going to dive into is trying to figure out why this thing won't start, which I believe is mostly tied in with our glow plug system. So the first place we're going to look is actually the glow plug relay, which I have you guys zoomed in on right now. You can find that right behind your alternator. It looks like a big old solenoid because that's what it is. And basically it's like the gateway for the power to your glow plugs. So without a working relay, you're never going to have working glow plugs. So that's why I think we should start there. So to test this, we are going to need a multimeter, and I'm using 2 test leads just to make it a little easier so I can show you guys and film. For setting your multimeter, you want it on DC, and if your multimeter is not an auto range unit, you're going to want to set it to like 15 volts. So to check it, we have one lead going to the backmost terminal right there, which has your yellow and brown wires on it. That's your output. And then our negative side of the multimeter is hooked over to our battery ground, or really any good ground. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and click the key on, and we should be getting around 11 volts on the multimeter. Alrighty, looks like we have about... Alrighty, sorry, my podcast clicked on whenever my truck key was left on. We have about 8.8 volts. We should be seeing about 11 volts, so that's definitely a little bit lower, but at least it's not 0. One thing to consider while doing this is that you want your engine to be cold, because if the PCM sees that the engine's warm, it will not fire the glow plugs, and you'll probably get a very low or maybe even a 0 reading. I find it kind of curious that this is dropping so fast. It should be holding out at 11, I believe. Odd. I didn't expect to see that. So that is definitely a lower reading than 11 volts, which is not a good sign. Another thing I've noticed over the years is that this shielding on the solenoid here is melted and crunchy, indicating that we have a heat issue. I can actually feel that solenoid's warm right now, that relay, whatever you want to call it, it's warm right now. So I think that is definitely not up to par. It's probably working a little bit, but not as good as it should. So let's go get our first new part, which is actually an upgraded part. All right, so our new part here is a White Rogers relay. This is a type 586-105111. I believe these are also called Stand-Core relays. I think they're kind of like interchangeable company names. Anyway, this looks quite a bit different, and it feels quite a bit heavier duty than the original. So I'm hoping it is better. I did a lot of research, and a lot of people recommended a relay like this. So I think it will be well worth it. It was about double the price of a standard relay, if I remember correctly. I ordered it about a month ago now. So, alrighty, and with that, we have our new solenoid installed. So this is our feed wire here. I had to retape the end that had that burnt off looking cover on it. I removed that because it wasn't doing much. Basically put the wires on in the same orientation, although I don't think it actually matters for the function of this thing. Yeah, so installs really easy, mounts in the same exact spot. Really easy product to install, so I didn't bother filming it. So let's go ahead and do a test now and see if we have any more voltage. Alrighty, same exact test hooked up again. Let me go ahead and hit the key and see what we get. I have nothing on the meter though. Why not? Oh. You know what's happening? We don't have enough power. I can see the whole dashboard's drawing down and cutting out. Okay. Alrighty, so the first thing we're going to do here is test our batteries. I keep thinking in the back of my head that these aren't that old, but they're got to be at least 5 years old. probably, so. We have 12, you guys see that? Yeah, we have 12 volts. Oh, and it's sinking. Okay, so the passenger side battery, not looking super hot. I did run this truck yesterday, so they were charged up enough then. I had to jump it to get it to go. And over here on the driver's side, now this one I could probably deal with. How many cold cranking amps is it? 1,000. Okay, well, it's like right on the brink. Okay, well, we have at least one very bad battery and one that's not so hot. Okay, well, you can probably hear it in the background, but we went ahead and hooked up the battery charger. So obviously, at least one of those batteries is very bad, and the other one's not that much better. So they need to be replaced. But I don't want to do that tonight because I don't feel like going back out and running errands. So we hooked a battery charger up so we can continue our tests. I would like to check glow plugs still tonight. So let's see if we have any power to the relay now. It doesn't seem like the dash is dimming as bad as it was. Still not getting the voltage we should be. Check our grounds. There we go. Oh, that looks a lot better. We had a crappy ground there. Okay, 10 volts, and it was dropping, because we still don't really have probably as many amps as we need, but that already looks a lot better than the 8 we had before. Okay, for our next test, we are going to check our glow plugs, which are the next thing downstream from the relay. To do that, you want to unclip this connector here on the back of the valve cover, and there's another one in the back, which you guys probably can't see because you're zoomed in. But it's going to be your front 2 pins up here and your rear 2 pins back there hooked to your glow plugs. We have our... So in that last clip, I was actually wrong. You want to check the front and rear pin of each connector, but we'll talk more about that later on in the video, so we're going to skip that for now. All right, so to pull the valve cover, it is a bunch of 13mm headed bolts, probably like 8 of them if I had to guess. Looks like we also have to remove our boost line on the passenger side and the dipstick tube. There's a bunch of random crap floating around up here. Before I open this thing up, I'm going to go ahead and fire up the compressor and blow all this crap out of here. I don't want my engine to eat any seeds or whatever this is up here. All right, that's a little better. Now let's see if we can get the valve covers off. I'm a little nervous. This engine has no blow-by, so I believe it's in good shape. Am I missing another bolt? The top's broken free, but the bottom's not. No, it's just stuck on the studs. The bottom center bolts are actually studs. That holds your dipstick on too. I think that's what's holding me up a bit. But I want to be very gentle so we don't warp the mating flange on this. You know, I just mentioned those are studs. Those are bolt studs. So it's a bolt for the valve cover and then a stud on top for the oil dipsticks. I need to remove those. Good thing I didn't pry on it. All right, got those out. I'm going to blame that on poor lighting and not being able to see what's going on down here. Now, I'm a little nervous to see the condition of my engine. I've never really gotten to see how this thing was serviced prior to me owning it, so who knows? Is it going to be all sludgy? I hope not. What godforsaken method do I have to use to get this thing out of here? I'm trying to be gentle so I don't knock a bunch of dust off that heater core. Dang down into the motor. I think we got it, folks. Well, and good news, our engine looks pretty clean. On bad news, I'm about to destroy an injector trying to get this valve cover out of here. Ah! Whoo-wee! Okay. Looks actually really good. I'm really impressed. I'm happy with that. That is not easy to get that valve cover out of there, though. Never would have guessed. Yeah, no sludge. Nasty buildup or anything. You see like a little bit of metal shavings or something. No, I must be seeing things. Yeah, nothing that concerns me in here. Looks like the original injectors, which I figured and kind of hoped. Yeah, awesome. This thing's pretty spotless in my opinion. I don't know what your guys' opinion is, but looking aight to me. Cool. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull the other side, and we will go ahead and start pulling glow plugs then. Alrighty, got the driver's side all uncovered as well, and more of the same. Looks very clean. I can't really get down there and show you guys. Let me try and get some light. There we go. As you can see, very clean, no sludge, no gunk. A little bit of like corrosion or something on top of the injector back there. You see that white stuff next to that wire? We'll have to investigate that. But very happy with how our, man, that road is noisy down there. Very happy with how our maintenance schedule is working on this truck. Let's see what this guy's flying down the road with. A street bike. It's a beautiful night tonight. It's in like the 40s in January in Iowa. Anyway, very happy with our oil change schedule. I think we are doing a good job because I don't see any sludge or nastiness. This oil does need to be changed soon, so it is a little nasty looking, but we are still not at our mileage mark. So I'm going to go ahead and get geared up to start pulling the glow plugs themselves. We will do that on the passenger side because I think you guys can see a little better over there. Before we do, though, there is a bunch of oil sitting on top of them. Maybe I'll pull you guys down here to show you. And I don't want that all going down the cylinders. We're going to try and minimize that as much as possible. I know some's going to go down there and it'll just burn out in the first startup, but see the oil sitting right on top? That's all just going to go right down to the cylinder. So I'm sure it'd be fine, but you can't really see. It's tough to see anything in this engine. But yeah, you can see there's a big puddle there. That's what I want to get out of there. So I'm just going to blow a little bit of compressed air on each glow plug before we pull them. And hopefully that will eliminate that. And then we can start actually pulling the glow plugs out. Alrighty, folks. Let's go ahead and break free this first one. Okay, so in my research, I don't know if I've mentioned it. I've never done this before. This is the deepest I've ever been in a 7.3. But in my research, people were saying you don't want to back it all the way out with a socket because you will collide into the rocker arm since you have to use a deep well socket. So I need to go ahead and find a piece of tube that fits down well in the glow plug, and you feed that down on it and then spin it out that way. All right, we got our little piece of hose. All right, we're spinning. I don't know if we're spinning the glow plug out or just spinning the hose on the glow plug, but oh, we're pulling the glow plug. Sweet. Something tells me there's still going to be a bunch of oil down in the cylinder, even though we did blow it all away, because that thing is coated. Definitely looks original to me, but I don't know. All right, finally I have a glow plug where I can kind of show you guys what I'm doing here. But I just have that hose jammed down on the top of it, and you can see it really actually spins out of there quite nicely, thankfully. That is quite the trick. The power of the internet, folks. There's all kinds of good tricks out there. This is not my original idea. So once we pulled out a few glow plugs, we went after the rest of them. And you'll see I mentioned a few times about how these can be tricky sometimes, and I believe that's mostly when these glow plugs have been replaced with non-OEM ones. The aftermarket cheapo ones can kind of swell up and then become a pain, break off, then you're really up a creek. Alrighty, well, we have our brand new Motorcraft glow plugs here, reinstalled back in our tube, and you can see it's a really small tube that I'm using. People say you can use a 1/4-inch fuel line. This stuff works good as well. This is some sort of vacuum line, but it is actually easier, I think. I already did the driver's side bank. I think installing them is actually easier than pulling them out. You just find the hole and drop it in and spin it with the hose, and yeah, you're done. Then you go back and torque them to 14 inch-pounds, I believe. All right, earlier I was wrong. I was ohming out on the wrong spot, and that's why we had very little action out of our glow plugs. So we're still hooking the ground at the same spot, but it's actually the front and back pin of each plug set that we should be checking. 0.8, 0.9. The last one we got to check here. Come on. These plugs are kind of hard to see. What do we have up there, folks? Because I can't see. And I know I'm on the pin now. Our ground's a little janky right this second. So we have our 8 brand new glow plugs sunk into this engine. All new well, not new connectors. We have connectors all hooked up. And I went through and did my ohm test again. Now earlier I screwed up and showed you guys the wrong thing. You want to ohm out the beginning and the end pin of each connector. So the 2 very far ends on each connector are your pins. So our initial glow plug test was not good, and we'll never know how many glow plugs we actually had working. Which kind of stinks because we're in a bit of a dilemma. To complete this project, I really should probably buy brand new valve cover gaskets under valve cover harnesses for the glow plugs and injectors, and the connector for the valve cover, all that jazz. I probably should do that. I just ohmed them all out and all the connectors seem good. I spent a bunch of time checking out all the wiring to the injectors and the glow plugs. They all look good. I'm suspecting that these are not the original harnesses because the colors aren't matching up with what I've seen pictures of online, but I could be wrong. And I'm not opposed to doing the gaskets, but the complete setup from Motorcraft is like $625. And that's pretty hard to stomach for something that I don't think's really wrong. There's always the chance, I mean, I could buy aftermarket stuff for like $150, but everyone says they're junk and stay away, and within a few months they'll break down and you'll be in worse shape. So as of right this second, I am leaning towards just leaving the original stuff in there. It looks good, and we're gonna run it. And worst case, I have to pull the valve covers off again one day and do that. I don't know. I'm gonna go sleep on it though, and I will see you guys in the morning, and maybe we'll call the Ford dealer and see. That price I was getting was online. Maybe they'll do something better in person at the dealership. Probably not. They'll probably double it. It's probably gonna be like $1,200. Probably $2,000. Who knows? I'll see you in the morning. Alrighty, it's the next morning, and I slept on it, and I decided that we are not gonna go ahead and spend $500 to replace some OEM parts that seem to be in great shape. I might come back to bite me, but this is really not too bad of a job if I have to do this again in the future. My only fear is that it's going to leave me stranded somewhere if the injector harness side of things gives up. If the glow plug side of things gives up, just worst case, it's hard to start. But, you know, there's always ways around it. I think if I remove this boost line, this will be much easier. Let's do that, because I want to limit how much crap I knock down into my clean engine. I bought these fuel line remover tools, and I wanted them to be good so much, but they really just aren't great. They have very limited applications. There they work, but they're just not as good as I wanted them to be, you know? You ever buy a tool and then you're kind of let down? I didn't bother cleaning up the outside of the valve cover because it's buried in crap anyway, so we just clean the inside up and we're gonna roll with it. Okay, well that was easier than I expected, actually. Why are you not sitting flat though? Something's wrong. There we go. Baby. Okay, there we go. I mean, I looked everything pretty good. Oh, I'm glad I checked because we had an injector that was unplugged. Woo-wee! I'm glad I pulled that back off. Man, that would have sucked. Oh, we got two that were unplugged. Crap. How the heck did that happen? Okay, so we need to try and get the valve cover in place without bumping those. Okay. Checking all four. Good. All right. We're going to call that good. Okay, I'm going to throw all the bolts back in it, which isn't a super fun task, but not too bad. And then I guess we're ready to go ahead and fire this thing up. I just spent $350 on some new Group 65 batteries. So that was fun. They have I got them from Blaine's Farm and Fleet. They have a 3-year free replacement and then like an 8-year prorated warranty. So hopefully they'll be good. Which way do these want to go? The other way. All right, last step here is we're going to blast everything with electronics cleaner because now we have corrosion everywhere. Don't worry, I shot the sparks at me instead of my air filter. But in all seriousness, that air filter's getting replaced this week. I ordered a new one. Probably shouldn't shoot it at the battery either, but... Well, sadly, AutoZone only had one set of new bolts, and they're kind of weird. They're these double-sided ones, so we're going to put them over on this side because this is where I hook my extra power up for my winch and my crane on the truck, so I have a big lead somewhere around here. I don't know where it disappeared off to. It frigged off, apparently. Ah, here it is. Duh. Yeah, so this guy's going to go boop, and that should actually be a lot nicer than the original nut and bolt for that purpose. All right, got them all installed here. Ended up having to use a regular old grade 8 nut and bolt there, which I don't love. Went ahead and put a larger diameter nut between the actual nut and the terminal because these nuts kind of like sink into the side, and if you just use one nut, it won't work well. If you ever look at like an actual battery terminal nut, see how they have that little ledge in there? Regular nuts don't have that. Also stinks because these are meant to hold themselves against the terminal. So not ideal, but I've got to deal with what the parts store has. We're going to go ahead and try something new here. I like CRC products. Never tried this one, though. This is a battery terminal protector. Oh, oh, oh. Goes on turbo mode. Yeah, never used this, but it says just connect everything up and then throw it on there. Yeah, bingo. Alrighty, folks, well, we have both batteries installed. Reinstalled our boost line, our air filter tubing, and just did a general check over. Yeah, okay, we are good. It showed no oil for a second there, but I guess that's just because we moved the dipstick around a million times. We should be good to go. I think I'm going to bump the key once without glow plugging it, just to let it crank a little bit, make sure. I'm still slightly concerned. Some people mentioned you have to worry about that oil falling down after the glow plugs. I think we're probably fine, but I'm going to bump it once just to be sure. I did think about cranking it over with the glow plugs out to shoot any oil out, but that makes a huge mess. Yeah, I think we're good. That thing cranks fast with those good batteries. All right, we'll let it glow plug for a couple seconds, and we'll see if it starts. I was expecting it to be smokier with that oil down in the cylinders, but it's been like 2 days that the truck sat here, so maybe it's slowly sunk past the rings. I don't know. Nothing leaking out of the valve cover yet, which is also good. I didn't really mention earlier, but it's like in the low 30s today, so not super cold, but definitely not warm out. Prior to doing all this work, there would have been no hope of it starting in this temperature. Freaking mic's like in my mouth. There we go. All right, so we are back in the garage. I got it backed in here. It sat outside all of lunch, got cold again, and I started it up and it fired right up again. It's not that cold today, but it is cold enough to snow a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. So it's in the low 30s. And this truck definitely would not have started in that before, especially not that easy. So we did something right. Truck runs good, so everything's all good there. The next big phase is we need to pull the turbo off, which is right there, and find our fuel leak and fix something in the turbo, which I will show you. I'm waiting on parts for that, though. So in the meantime, we are going to go ahead and get this thing jacked up and pull all the wheels. I want to do a tire rotation, check all the brakes, check all the axle fluids, transfer case, all that jazz. Not super interesting stuff, so I'm not going to show you much, but we'll do a little check and see. Already got the wheels pulled off the old Powerstroke here and did our full inspection. So I rolled all the way around underneath this thing, up each frame rail, checked out all of our spring mounts, shock mounts, fuel lines, brake lines, general condition of rust, all that jazz, and we're looking pretty good. A couple minor things. This upper ball joint over here has a tiny bit of play in it, so I need to pay attention to that. Not enough to worry about it, but something to keep in mind. The calipers, rotors, everything here are looking good. I had to replace these rotors 2 years ago. I actually had cracked rotors on the front, both sides, so all that's new. Otherwise, everything looked good in the front. In the rear, we did run into some issues. As you can see, we made a big old mess because our shoes were getting really low, really low. Some would say too low. So I went ahead and spent $60. Put new shoes on both sides, and that should be good. It is a real pain to do drum brakes when you have a fully working parking brake system. I don't mind drum brakes. They're really easy to me when you don't have to worry about parking brake stuff, but trying to work around that could be slightly tougher. So we're looking good, and overall, rust-wise, there's not really a good way to show you. Let me see if I can grab a light. All right, you're on the underside with me now. Rust-wise, as you can see, we're looking really good. Like I mentioned earlier, spent a lot of time painting this thing when I first bought it with PR15. Since then, I've done a second coat, and then every winter, I try and use fluid film on it to keep up with it, and seems to make all the difference. Now that I have the Dodge, I'm hoping to try and keep this thing out of the salt as much as possible, but at the end of the day, you know, you got to do what you got to do. This truck is starting to rust again right here. It's hard to see with all the road grime. So I need to find another fender or find a good paint shop that can fix that. I've also got one spot on this back door. So I want to get after it before it becomes a big problem. So yeah, we're looking good there. I'm gonna go ahead and rotate all the tires, play musical chairs with them, throw those back on, and then we're gonna head back under the hood to yank the turbo out of here and try and find our fuel leak. One other kind of maintenance item, although not very critical, I did, was went ahead and polished up our Alcoas. These are the factory wheels that were on this truck, and they still look great. I had them refinished when I put these tires on about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I don't know. Put them on like a year after owning the truck, or probably less than that. So these things are getting old. Falcon Wild Peaks, man, great tires. These have 50,000 miles on them of mostly towing or hauling stuff, and they still have a good bit of tread on them. Although this is probably the last winter for them, I have been extremely impressed with them. I'm gonna go ahead and stick them all on now, but they look a little shinier. After we got the wheels and tires rotated around, I ended up firing up the engine once more to check out and see, do some cave exploration, see if we can find where the fuel leak's coming from. I believe it is coming from underneath the fuel bowl, but I'm not for certain where. There's like 3 main leak points under there: the fuel bowl, fuel lines, or fuel pump. This fuel pump is only like 5 years old, maybe. It's been replaced since I've owned the truck. So I don't think it's that, but we'll check. And it seemed like there's also the fuel lines down there and the full fuel. I keep wanting to say full pump from that stupid video that guy did of pranking a guy. Anyway, if you haven't seen that, guy filled his fuel tank full of SpaghettiOs and then took it to a mechanic. Really funny video, but back on track. So I think the fuel bowl needs to be resealed, but I also ordered the line, so we'll do that later. But first, we need to pull this turbo, and the reason why we're pulling it will be evident later. When we get it out, I can show you a lot better, so I'll wait till then. But we have some damage inside of it. It needs to be rebuilt, and a new wheel. I feel like I had something else important to say, but I don't know. Anyway, I've been putting this off all day. I'm not looking forward to this project. It can apparently be a real bear to get this thing out of here. We'll see. I've never done it. Can't be impossible. Well, Harbor Freight strikes again. Got to interrupt our work to go get a proper socket. Went out last night and specifically bought this set of flex head sockets because I heard they're the ticket for this job. And I specifically needed the 15 millimeter. Guess what this set's missing? The 15 millimeter. It is so frustrating. I don't understand why companies just don't. I don't know if they do that so they can advertise it as a larger range, so you think you're getting more, or if they just think people don't use 15 millimeters. I don't know, but incredibly frustrating that I need to interrupt this project to go get the correct tool that I thought I bought last night. Anyway, let's go to the parts store and make the best of it. All right, it has been several nights of frustrating work. So the Harbor Freight sockets was the first kick in the nuts. And then I took a night or two off to work on my Miller air pack. So I'd have a video for you guys this week, which is middle of January sometime. Anyway, during that time, I was waiting for some sockets to show up from Amazon. And they showed up, but they are way too big. I'll grab one as reference. So here's the 15 millimeter swivel out of that set, which is a nice heavy duty impact swivel, but you do not want a heavy duty impact swivel for this. So I screwed with that for an hour or so trying to figure that out. Didn't work. That was last night. Finally threw in the towel and went around town again and ended up finding them at AutoZone or Advanced Auto. I don't remember which. I think it was AutoZone had them. These are much lower profile, just chrome 15 millimeters. This is the ticket for those two bottom bolts on the back of the turbo, the actual two nuts that hold the turbo to the flange. So I finally got those out, and I thought I was out of the woods. And boy, oh boy, was I wrong. Those two bolts are easy compared to the back two pedestal bolts. Little 10 millimeter guys. I think I also should have had a 10 millimeter 1/4 inch drive swivel socket for those, same idea. But I ended up making it work. I'll have to show you because part of it's jammed into the turbo right now. But I used a bunch of swivel sockets and an actual, U-joint socket on a 10 millimeter 1/4 inch drive, and we finally got it. I also found that it was extremely helpful to use a little camera guy like this. My mom just got me this one for Christmas. Thanks, Mom. Incredibly useful for seeing the pedestal mounts bolts. Without this, I don't know if I would have gotten it. I'm sure I would have eventually, but it's nice to be able to see what you're doing. Everything all snaked in there. So I apologize for not really filming a whole lot there, but I was getting quite frustrated, and I don't know. It would have just been hours and hours of filming and nothing happening. I mean, that was legitimately 6 hours between screwing around with sockets and stuff like that. But I think that thing do not want to come. Oh my. Oh, there's another connector. Oh, that is an electrical connector for the turbo. That must run the VGT or whatever the hell that thing's called. EBVV valve or whatever. Come on, Dad, don't fight me. Lovely. Why wouldn't I break the connector like a meathead? Well, you just broke the electrical connector. All right. Whew, we officially made our truck an IDI. What a fight. Alrighty, you guys ready to see why we went through all the hassle of pulling this turbo? Yeah. So when I bought this truck, it had a cracked intake housing, like the air filter housing. And I didn't like it, but I went ahead and bought the truck anyway. And then several years after I bought it, I pulled the intake tube off the turbo for some reason, and I noticed that it had some damage. Now, I do not recall it being that bad. That's pretty bad. Way worse than I remember. So that's why I wasn't even planning on doing that in this video. I was just doing to do glow plugs, and that was going to be a big check over the truck and some other stuff. And then I pulled the intake off to get that valve cover off and saw this and went, ooh. So, yeah, that's why we pulled this turbo off. So I have a rebuild kit and a new Wicked wheel. So we are going to get a little power performance upgrade out of this, hopefully, and get rid of this. Alrighty, folks. With the turbo on the table, I think it's pretty evident that we went a lot deeper into this video than I was planning on it. So we're going to have to go ahead and make this a 2-part video. Now, we got a lot done in this video, so it is definitely not a failure or anything like that. We got the glow plugs all replaced, the glow plug relay upgraded, new batteries, new brakes, got the turbo yanked off, and finally got to tell the story on my Powerstroke. I love this truck, as you guys can probably tell from my spiel in the beginning. It's definitely staying around, no worries there. In the next episode, we are going to go ahead and rebuild the turbo, which I have never done before, so that's going to be interesting. We're also going to reseal the fuel bowl and fix some fuel leaks, fuel lines. And who knows what else we're going to get into. There's plenty of other little things that need to be repaired, and I have a few wants, like some bed lights for, reverse and work lights I would like. I'd like to get the under bed winch working again. There's a lot of little things. I'd love to put some sound deadening in it, but that's really expensive, so I don't know if that'll be anytime soon. So there will definitely be a second part on this, finishing up the Powerstroke. The truck's actually really close to finished for what I want in my head. The big final thing that I kind of want to do is I would like to do an RSK lift kit. Not really because I want it lifted, more for suspension quality. I've heard they're supposed to be way better. I would only lift it like 2 inches. I don't want it much taller. I just want it to ride a lot smoother. And the reverse shackle kit with Super Duty springs is supposed to handle that. That won't be in the next episode, though. That's something I got to save up for. That's probably like $2,500 worth of work between shocks, springs, and that kit. So, last thing I want to touch on, something I kind of thought of as I was editing this week. The bed, the original bed and the original bed cap. When I bought this truck, I posted some pictures of it online on Powerstroke forums and stuff. and people went crazy over the bed cap. It is wild. It was a wild cap. It was the biggest I've ever seen. I've never seen another one like it. I don't remember what brand it is, sadly. It is long gone. I tried to sell it, and then I tried to give it away years and years ago, and the only person who wanted it was a dog rescue in like North Carolina when I lived in Maryland. So it wasn't, they didn't come get it. I ended up having to trash it, which is a shame because it was something that was really cool, but it just didn't fit my needs, and I got rid of it. But it was insanely tall. It had a big flip up back door on it. It had a Shore plug like an RV would for I think 220 input, which ran to a circuit breaker, which had like 15 or 20 outlets throughout the ceiling of this thing. It was wild. I wish I had more video and picture of it. So I figured I was going to get some comments on that. I wanted to touch on it a little bit. So with that, I will see you guys on the next one while we finish up our Powerstroke repairs and minor upgrades, and then hopefully we'll be putting this thing back to work in no time. See you guys then.